operates through cause and effect. Everything
Okay,
within
I
the
didn't
universe
ask
is
you. I
subject
didn't
to
ask you about the universe. All you're simply doing now is you're monologuing. Now,
We're subjected
does
to cause and effect.
causality? Listen, dude. I'm being very patient, contrary to what you think. Because if I was not patient, you would have been gone a long time ago. Now, I'm asking you the question. I'm going to be straightforward. And when I ask simple, straightforward questions, atheists such as yourself, for some reason, become obtuse. Now, here's the question. Must causality necessarily exist first in order to invoke the viability of eyesight and sense perception?
All right, for the sake of the discussion, can you define your usage of causality so we're not talking past each other?
Okay, I'll ask the question one more time. If you do not
Do you
give
want
me a
to answer
direct
it? Can you
answer to the
define
simple
causality
question,
so
I'm
I
going,
can?
okay, you're now muted. See, what you're doing right now is plan B. It is to be argumentative and to be disruptive. You're now muted. Now, I will ask the question again. If you give me another evasive response, okay, and by evasive means it's, I don't have to agree with your response, but if it is evasive, I will eject you from the server. Okay, which I do not want to do. Now, I know that evasive responses are a tactic to produce a stalemate in a Q&A session. Now, must causality exist first in order to invoke the viability of eyesight and sense perception?
Yes, and as I said, everything requires
Right.
causality in this
Okay,
universe.
good. I don't need a lecture, sir. All I want is an answer to the
I've
question.
already said that earlier,
Okay,
so it
because
follows.
I understand the issue far better than you do. Now, since you state that you must presuppose causality implicitly when you invoke sense perception, and then you conclude, therefore, causality, that is a textbook example of begging the question. So your accounting for causality is a fallacy.
Do you agree that effect follows cause, or cause
It doesn't
precedes
matter
effect?
what I think. No, it doesn't matter. You and I do
Are
not
we having
share
a
the same
discussion?
world. Listen to me. Stop over talking
So
me.
are we having a discussion?
Does
Is this
not
just a one-way?
stop over talking me.
I'm on here to have a
Over talk
discussion.
me one more time and you're gone. Okay? Now, I've been more than patient with you. Stop over talking me.
Is this a discussion or a debate,
Okay,
or is this just a one-way?
Okay. Bye.
Oh my gosh.
Now, how many times do we have to see this? This is what happens, is they start an argument and they continue to overtalk and they try to scurry down they try to segue down a semi-related path to start an argument, okay?
Wow.
And he was warned multiple times, okay?
I'll be willing to continue the discussion.
Okay. Now, he's maintaining that he is agency in virtue that there are causal relations and connections. But when I asked him to give an account of causal relations and connections as a prerequisite for agency, he committed a fallacy begging the question. Invoking sense perception implicitly contains the assertion of causality. So he gave a fallacious line of reasoning defending causality.
That was beyond painful, man. Wow.
How many times have I told you, Tonlock? When they get cornered with their absurdity, they go to plan B, which is to become argumentative. How many times have we seen this?
Discussion.
Many times, way too many times.
What's that, Mo?
I said it was an interesting discussion, however short-lived it was.
Well, he was given many multiple warnings to stop over talking me. I had to ask several questions 4 and 5 times. And yet atheists claim that they are the ones who are champions of reason. And you ask him a simple question, and then he wants to be a sleazebag and go, that's a malformed question. It wasn't a malformed question. It's that
Obviously
you
it
just
was
didn't know
not.
how to answer it. Wasn't a malformed question. In other words, if somebody asks me a question that I'm afraid to answer or I don't know how to answer it, you just go, you reach into your little bag of tricks and go, oh, it's a malformed question.
Wow. Malformed.
That's a malformed question.
He didn't even explain why or how it was malformed. He just said it was malformed.
No, he didn't. It's like when people go, it's like when he said that I was committing an ad hominem. Telling him he was being sleazy was not an ad hominem.
No. Not at all. What a tool, man.
Yeah. Now, I didn't ban him. I kicked him.
That's what I thought. Hey, this is atheist for you, man.
By the way, I just got on an atheist radio broadcast. Unfortunately, the morons on the Florida Atheist 10 network didn't have the audio of my phone call flowing to the YouTube audience, so nobody action with them. They could hear them speaking, and they got completely smoked. They were deer in the headlights. Typical moron atheists who think they're erudite and smart. And then when I asked them a question, which they were clueless about, all they just reach into their little bag of tricks and give me their little pre-prepared atheist speeches. I'm really hoping eventually, because I pointed out to them that not only were they over talking me, they were interrupting me, and they weren't even addressing the question, nor did they understand it. The guy go, well, there's no evidence for God. I said, well, if there's no evidence for God, then God is not the causal origin of everything that begins. What is the causal origin of everything that begins? The guy goes, well, we don't know. I said, if you don't know what the causal origin is, how did you rule out God? And the genius goes, because there's no evidence for God. I said, that's the same thing as saying that God is not the causal origin. How did you determine that? Saying there's no evidence for God is saying the same thing. And I said, unless you have a logical defeater for God, and in the absence of telling me what the causal origin is, you're going to have to tell me how you ruled God out. Telling me that there's no evidence for God is not answering the question. It's just a restatement of the same claim.
You need to take a board with tally marks, man. Board with tally marks on it. Every time they hang up on you, put another tally mark on the board.
When somebody says there's no evidence for God, that is the same thing as saying God is not the causal origin of everything that begins. Okay, it means the same thing.
Keep saying that though, I don't understand that. They're supposed to be beacons of intelligence and stuff like that, and yet they keep using these old, tired, and illogical arguments. They keep
because I'll tell you why. It's because we don't have enough Christians systematically and chronically confronting them with their atrocious slogans.
That's what it is. You're right. I totally agree with that. Totally.
All right. Now, when listen,
arguments.
Listen. As we know presuppositionally, excuse me, I have the hiccups. We know that when atheists make assertions, whatever the assertion is, we know even before they open up their mouth, given their model of reality, whatever they assert is baseless. Because whatever they assert, it's in virtue of not God. And we know that no such world exists. So every assertion they make will not have an ultimate justification. So when they say there's no evidence for God, they don't have a justification for it. So all I need to do is simply question them about the assertion and get them to hang themselves. since they are the ones who insist that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and that the burden of proof is on the one making the assertion, when they say there's no evidence for God, I just simply analyze the statement and say, okay, what does this mean? It means when we say there's no evidence for God, when they say an apple is not evidence for God, it's the same thing as saying this apple does not stand in causal relations to God as the causal origin.
Makes sense to me.
To state to say that there is no evidence for God is to say that there is nothing that stands in causal relations to God as the causal origin of everything that begins. So then the next question is this: since they're asserting God is not the causal origin, okay, then the question is, what is the causal origin of everything that begins? All right. Now, if you don't ask that begins, then they'll say something stupid like the Big Bang. You say, well, if the Big Bang began, then it's going to need a causal origin. What is it? Right? Now, 99.9% of the time, your atheist friend will say, well, we don't know. I say, good. Then if you don't know what the causal origin is of everything that begins, how did you rule out God? Now, either they're going to offer a logical defeater for God. Like, for example, if I find a cell phone, if Veckel and I are walking down the sidewalk and I find a cell phone and I turn to Veckel and I say, this is not Darth Vader's cell phone. Or let me put it this is not Abraham Lincoln's cell phone. And he says, do you know whose cell phone that is? No, I don't. How do you know it's not Abraham Lincoln's cell phone? Because Abraham Lincoln does not exist. Okay? Now, I've offered a logical defeater. And in virtue of the logical defeater, I can say that there's no relation between the cell phone and Abraham Lincoln. Or I could offer another logical defeater. Abraham Lincoln lived and died long before there were electronics or even telephones. So it logically could not be his cell phone. So I've offered a logical defeater. So we know that the atheists cannot provide a logical defeater for God, and we know that they cannot establish what the causal origin of everything that begins is. And since they cannot provide either one, then they have no basis to assert there's no evidence for God.
That's right.
Simply making a vacuous claim that has no foundation or substance to it. It's just an empty, baseless claim. They tried to turn the tables on me. And I said, I haven't made an argument to you. I haven't asserted anything to you. I'm asking you about your worldview on atheism. It doesn't matter what I think. And I hope and I pray to the flying spaghetti monster that they restore my audio to the YouTube channel, so you guys can hear it, because you'll be laughing your butts off.
Oh, I need to talk to you in private, Duncan, about you praying to the flying spaghetti monster, man. I don't think that's Christian-like, so we need to talk in private about that, man. Bring you some.
All right, okay. Just be. Well, that's a malformed question. But you know what, though? Even though it's a malformed question, it does have a regime of validity.
See, now
Regime of validity.
there, it's used legitimately.
Yes.
In ridicule.
And the real question is, are you a scholar?
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, not totally unrelated, but somebody asked earlier if you're going to do your another episode of What Is That today. So.
Oh yeah, it's going to be spontaneous, but I'll try to do every day. What is that?
They're getting into something. Be right back. Hey.
Oh, you want me to? You want to do it? You want to do a version of what is that, ladies and germs?
What?
You want to play What Is That? He's asking.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I've ever played.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for What Is That?
Uh-oh.
Is everybody ready? Do you want to play?
You got in the
Here it
the
comes.
chat.
What is that? Look in debate religion politics. What is that?
Oh, confused.
What is that?
Unattractive.
Do you know what that is? Now, some of you know what that is.
A man in a dress.
It's ma'am.
It's ma'am. Actually, that is Laura, formerly known as atheist debater Cliff Jumper on Google Hangouts and on Discord. He's a regular atheist, and he came out of the closet. And by the way, this is not a joke. That's an actual picture that he posted himself to his YouTube. And by the way, I have more pictures of him that he posted. But due to the fact that some of you have just eaten lunch, and I have respect for you that I don't want to induce vomiting, I won't post.
Thank you. I ate lunch a while back.
Yeah, and actually I was getting ready to eat, so I do want to enjoy the food.
And that concludes this moment's episode of What Is That?
A show that you would see in the 80s.
And this was episode 4.
I'm your host, Duncan Atheism. The show originally aired on CBS in the 70s, hosted by Alex Quebec.
Look at him. He looks so proud and nose up in the air and everything, taking a deep breath of fresh air. And look at him. He's just so proud, so happy. And then almost.
Try not to break in the song, dude.
Oh, gosh. I feel like I want to sing. This is bad. This is a serious problem.
Until next time, folks, remember to keep in order your hokies and your pokies. Until next time, on the next episode of What Is That?
I think we got a fan of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody put Raggedy Ann hasn't aged well. Oh, Jack. He said Raggedy Ann hasn't aged well. Yo, he definitely looks like Raggedy Ann. Andy for 35 years. I can't find him. But I still love the dress.
Yeah, Mega looks like a little girl, dude. He looks like a little girl from like 50s.
He trying to look like a little girl?
I don't know,
Maybe.
but that's what he looks like. He looks like a little girl straight out of a dang 50s episode.
Well, when he was here, he was mad at the fact that people were criticizing him about his clothes, the clothing that he was wearing. And it sounded like he was saying, no, they're not kids' clothes, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, he was like, they're not kids' clothes because they fit me. Which kind of defeats the point of it.
Such amazing logic.
It's like a ugly doll.
Yeah, Raggedy Ann. There you go.
I prefer Draggedy Andy.
Raggedy Andy.
Raggedy Ann. Oh man, this world is in trouble. My gosh.
It's been in trouble for a while, though. To be fair.
Yeah. This end.